Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. So today we continue to discuss about the Wonderful Truths. The Buddha mentioned about Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. So today we continue to study about the Wonderful Truths, the last Noble Truths that relate to the Eightfold Paths. And the first one concerned with the wise views or right views of life. And we have discussed about we need to have the right views about the karma or the law of cause and effect. And we have discussed briefly about the three characteristics of existence, including anicca, that's been impermanence of things, has been nothing lasts forever, and the items that we discussed next is the anatta, that means no self. In Buddhism, there's no real self at all. One of the reasons why we suffer because we are attached to this self that in the Buddhist view, actually it was composition of the five aggregates, five skandhas, including the form, that means physical body, the feeling or sensation, as we discussed before, and the perception, our thinking, the mental formations, our habitual patterns that we form in our mind, and the consciousness. So we see that the Buddha breakdowns whichever thing that we call as a self into the five aggregates. So eventually, the Buddha mentioned that there's no real self at all. So most of the time we associate ourselves with this physical body, with our mentality, with our feelings, our thinking. But again, the Buddha reminds us that they are changeable. Nothing lasts forever. Nothing is concrete. Nothing is status. So there's no real self at all. So last time we stopped at the part that relate to the consciousness. Now here, the Buddha provides us the information about our consciousness that has a layers, and again, they are changeable, and there's no real self at all. But that's why, in general, because of the attachment to one of those aggregates, that's why we associate ourselves with some type of self, permanent self, but actually there's no permanent, there's no real self at all. So let's us go back to discuss further about the consciousness that we have left before. And here we know that according to modern psychology, that we receive input from environments, that is forms, the colors, the sound, the food, and so forth. So those information will be filtered out through our memories, our language, our values, our attitudes, and so forth. in order to be processed in our mind. And if we accept those information, we would keep in our what called short-term or long-term memories, and it will affect to our behavior and our um, emotional state of mind. So again, according to modern psychology, our mind or our memories work like a computer. So here we have the external event, and our sensory memory we process those informations with attention and consciousness. And if we like some of them, we would put them into the short-term memories. And if we really like to that do informations, we put them in long-term memory. So it's similar as a computer. We have keyboard, modem, encoding, and it will activate the memories. We can save information on our hard drive of computer. So again, this is information processing model. So we see that the sight, the hearing, the touch, the smell, uh, the taste, um, that's related to our five sense organs, and we will process those information through those five sense organs, and we will have some type of intermediate memory to remember some of them. We have some sensory register. If we don't pay attention much, those information would be out, would be left out. But if um, we have interest on those external events, so we will put them into what we call working memories. And if the boy don't pay attention much, we put to them out automatically. But if we send some meanings of them, we put there's uh, informations inside what you call the long-term memory or long-term storage. Um, so that is related to our what cognitive behavioral system. This form the information, the knowledge, the feeling that we have, and it will um, um, be determined what we call self-concept, self-thinking, self-analytical thinking, and so forth. And with those information, we would analyze again those size, those external informations. And again, this is our work, the work of our mind. It's pretty easy to recognize the essential input for environment, and if we filter them out, if we don't use them, don't need them through our sensory memories, we will throw away or we don't pay attention. But if it's meaningful, we put in the short term, and if some of them don't have any kind of meaningful, uh, we would put them in the trash, just mean throw away. We don't pay attention on them. But there's some good information that we pay attention about. We put into long-term memories. Again, it's similar, not exactly, but similar way that the Buddha reminds us that we have uh, a layers of consciousness, the sight, the hearing, the touch, the smell, and the taste. And again, this more than 2,500 years, the Buddha could propose this kind of mind diagrams that is so compatible with modern psychology. That's why many psychologists like to learn more about Buddhism because they are so compatible. So again, when we interact with external condition or event through our sight, hearing, and so forth, we would have what you call the perception, the thinking, the feeling uh, of distinguishing them. We may recognize those sounds, those image, those information in this six consciousness. And this six consciousness will relate the information to the seven consciousness. That's what attached um, to the cell, and it's attached to the eight consciousness or the storage consciousness. Or here they say deep karma. They store all of the information in the past. Again, please remember that in Buddhist view, when we talk about the past, that we talk about the limited past life, not only this lifetime, but also limitless, numerous past life that uncountable. So whichever information we store here, we store this eight consciousness, the seven consciousness would attach to them as a real self. That's why it try to perhaps it try to reject the informations that the six consciousness relate to them. So for example, if we see some beautiful flower through our sight, and the six consciousness recognize, oh, this beautiful flower, and this uh, six consciousness will delay that information, the beautiful flowers, to the seven consciousness, and seven consciousness say, oh wow, I like that beautiful flowers. That means it's attached to that beautiful flowers, and it identifies itself that it like that flower. And as the moment that it attached to the beautiful flowers, it will store those information into the eight consciousness. It's like the long-term memories in the modern psychology mentioned about. So again, that's the point that, let's say, if somehow when we uh, uh, drive through a landfill, somehow we could not endure the smell from the landfill or the garbage there. So through the smelling consciousness, the six consciousness recognize, oh, this is not good smelling, good orders. So it's delayed to the seven consciousness about that information, and seven consciousness try to reject that information. That's orders. No, I don't like that orders. Uh, so that's rejection information footprint would be registered in the eight consciousness as the storage information. So next time when we pass by any type of landfill, somehow we have the negative reaction about those places, that, oh, I don't like to pass through those places because of the orders. So again, this look like the long-term memories that we store in our brain. But in Buddhism, we go further. It's not only in our brain, but also in our consciousness. Even after we're done with this life, we would carry on those information to the next life. So again, here we can compare and contrast between the Buddhist eight levels of consciousness with the modern uh, psychology, what they analyze about informations. Here we have sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. Here we have the seeing, hearing, feeling, smell, and taste. This is similar, and we have input from external condition right here. If we have some information about external condition, external event, and it will affect to our sight, our hearing, and so forth, and it will process what they call automated uh, um, processing of the thought. And as long as we pay attention on those sights, on those colors, on those voices, and so forth, we would pass the information to what we call working memory, and through the logic and reason, we will have higher thinking about them, analyzing them, and we put them into what we call the knowledge bank. So right here is similar that when we like the flower, right, and the six consciousness will recognize as beautiful flower and relay that beautiful flower to the seven consciousness to analyze. Is like higher thinking, um, and when it identifies itself with that flower, it will register that information into deep karma or storage consciousness. So there is the modern psychology model. So through higher thinking, the information will be processed through the auditory, through the visualization, seeing, and after uh, mm, accepting those information, after processing those information, they will put into what they call long-term memories, and that's long-term memory would be put into what we call knowledge bank, and this what they call here the storage consciousness. They store all the information, and again, it's like a knowledge bank in modern terms, in Buddhist view, or here in the Buddhist view, this instead of we call knowledge bank, we call the storage consciousness. You store every information, and those information, those knowledge bank, or those storage information would affect to the way we write, the way we spell, the way we draw, the way we speak, and the way we test out, or the way we interact with other people, the way we think about other things, and so forth. So here, the A consciousness, or the storage consciousness, or the storage information will affect to the decision of number seven consciousness, that whether they want to receive more information or not, or they want to reject those information. For example, let's say if someone get used of eating hamburger, right? So in the United States, wherever they go, they would find Burger King, McDonald's, right? So because they store the information in the knowledge bank, or the conscious information that they like eating hamburger here. So let's say when they drive through a McDonald's, uh, so they would stop by and buy that hamburger again, because uh, they like that taste, they like that food, or the seven consciousnesses like that food. It identify itself with that kind of food. So it will reinforce the seven consciousnesses about the lightness of its food, or the attachment to that food. And the more we eat the hamburger, the more we get used of that. So it's similar in this case. So again, through the knowledge bank, it will affect to the way how we test our taste, our thinking, and so forth. So it will affect to the whole process of our thinking, and it will enforce, enhance our knowledge bank. This is a similar way in the Buddhist view. And vice versa, if uh, uh, we got drive through a landfill, that have some kind of orders that we don't like, because this seven consciousness register that information in the eight consciousness, like the knowledge bank have registered or have saved that land view orders in this knowledge bank, and that's why it affects to the way how we interact or how we react to the situation when we drive through those places. So again, look at these two models, we see that they're so comparable. Even um, the times difference is so wide, it's more than 2,500 years. So that's why I want to present you that the Buddhist levels of consciousness is so compatible uh, with science, with modern psychology now. And but still, the importance I want to emphasize here is that the Buddha break out those consciousness. And again, the sight, the hearing, the touch, the smell, and the taste. Again, that depend on the five sense organs. And what happens if we sleep? And what happens if we pass away? Those five sense organs may not work anymore. But in Buddhist view, the uh, six containers, seven containers, and eight containers are still working, especially while we're sleeping. Whichever information during the day we have seen, we have heard, and we analyze through the six containers that recognize, oh, I like that forms, I like that person, and it's delayed that information to the seven consciousness. It attached to that image, that person, and it store its footprint in the eight consciousness. That's why sometimes in our dreams, the image of the one that we love or we like may appear in our dreams. Not exactly on the same day, probably the next day or a few months later or a few years later, because the information was stored there. So again, but still, the Buddha say that with those information, with those level of consciousness, even they are impermanent. For example, the six consciousness depend upon the five, first five consciousness that's related to the sight, the hearing, the touch, and the smell, and the taste. So when we pass away, they don't function anymore. So there's no more six consciousness. But uh, because of the attachment to our views, to our physical body, to our mentality, our perception, and so forth, the seven and consciousness is still working in the profound way. That after we pass away, those information that we store in the eight consciousness would be passed to the next life. It's like our C drive. If our computers was broken, or if our motherboard was broken, or have some things wrong or malfunction, we may take out our C drive and plug into different computers, and we still use that information that we have stored in the C drive, or nowadays we call it, the jump drive or external hard drive and so forth. So again, in modern psychology, we limit ourselves in this lifetime. It only affects to our brain, our memories, but of course, it belongs to um, um, the spiritualities. We could not have any kind of equipments that test our existence in the past or in the future. That's why most of the time we just focus on the information that we think that we save in the brain. But in Buddhism, we go beyond that. We recognize that this information will be passed along to the next life. But still, the Buddha said that because of the seven constant attachment to those information from the eight consciousness, whether it's good or bad, or um, or they or it those like those information is to register those information in the eight consciousness. That's why it leads us to be reborn in different realms of existence, like in the heaven, in the human realms, in the unknown realm, and so forth. As long as we don't have any attachment, uh, especially the seven consciousness, will be free to come and go. Let me give one example. For example, if the one who are addicted with smoking cigarette, and so whenever uh, they stop at gas station or shopping center or wherever that sell cigarette, they would love to step down and go into the store to buy cigarettes. But for us, we free. We would not have that type of addiction. So whether we go to a shopping center, gas station, and so forth, we free. We would not pay attention much about the cigarettes. So that means we free from smoking addiction, or even alcohol, whichever negative addiction, harmful substance that someone addicted to. So again, we would be free from those things if we don't attach to them. But for those attached to them, they would be slave to those addictions, whether smoking, drinking, gambling, and so forth. So those the seven consciousness, because we are slave with our attachment to certain people, to a material, and so forth. That's why this uh, eight consciousness or seven consciousness would lead us to the future rebirth. But in a sense, the Buddha said there's just no real self at all. So that's why we need to recognize the Buddhist views on again uh, the five aggregates, that there's no real uh, ego, there's no real self at all. Again, so these are the explanations that the Buddha provide us, so that we can see the forms, its impermanence. We would not stay here longer, more than 120, 150 years. Um, so those no real self. If it's real self of this physical body, it will last forever, but that's not the case. And our feeling uh, and sensation are changing moment by moment. The first moment we feel good, the next moment we feel bad, and so forth. There's no real sense of feeling, perception. That's our thinking. We have all kind of thinking: good thinking, bad thinking, analytical thinking, and so forth. So again, there's no real self about the thinking. If we have the real self of thinking, let's say if we think about good things, let's say we think that we need to uh, uh, help other people, let's say helping the homeless people. And if we maintain that type of thinking for the whole times, yes, it will be our nature, ourself, but that's not the case. Sometimes we may think about them in a positive way, sometimes we may think about them in a negative way. So our thinking is changeable. So there's no permanent um, in the thinking and the mental formation or habitual patterns in our mind. So again, when we were born, we would not have any kind of negative habitual patterns about habits like drinking, smoking, gambling, and so forth. But throughout the times when we interact with society and other people, when we socialize with other people, somehow we pick up or build up those bad habits of drinking, gambling, and smoking. Again, if it's real, it stay there forever. But again, if someone has the determinations, they could stop their addiction, like smoking or drinking. But if they identify themselves as an alcoholic person, or a smoker, or drug user, for the rest of their life, there's no way for them to change their behavior. There's no way for them to change their addiction. But of course, there's a possibility for them to change. Again, those bad habits can be changed, and even good habit too. Good habit of go to sleep early and wake up early. Good habit of organizers before we do. Of course, we can change throughout the times. Again, there's no real sense of self in mental formation, and relate to the contrasts like I presented recently, that through our explanation of layers of consciousness, again, there's no real self at all from the first consciousness, uh, from the five sense consciousness to the six consciousness to the seven or eight consciousness. There's no real sense of self, but because of our attachment to the ego, that's why the seven consciousness identify itself uh, as a real self that attached to the information that rests into the eight consciousness, or the all the karmas that is great in the past as a real self. That's why we revolve in the samsara or cycle of rebirth. As long as we don't have any attachment to our sense, to the form and so forth, will be free. So that is the idea. The Buddha reminds us that it's better for us to recognize us. Of course, it's not easy to apply in our daily life, because most of the time we would have some sort of attachment to this physical body, to thinking, to our feeling, and so forth. But again, as long as we understand this charge, it's much easier for us to let go of something else. For example, if we uh, consume ice cream, if we eat ice cream with our friends, again, the moment that we consume the ice cream, somehow we feel good about that ice cream. But a couple hours later, we would not have any more good feeling about that taste at all, because it's gone. So if we recognize this just impermanence, we would not attach too much about ice cream or any kind of delicious food. The food is just the food. The food is just like the medicine to keep our body intact. If we have that kind of thinking, it's much easier for us to move on in our life. Otherwise, it's not easy. We will bring some sort of problems like obesity, overeating, and so forth. And that's for the feeling and for the perception too. Again, if somehow someone says something negatively about us, and we, of course, we would have the negative thinking about them too. So again, if we recognize, oh, that thinking is impermanence, we can change our negative thinking about that person. Even they criticize us, even they yell at us, even they score us. But with compassionate mind, with compassionate thinking, we would treat them in the nice way, in the proper way, and eventually they may change their attitude toward us. So that is the idea of lesson or attachment to the thinking, to the feeling, to the habit, and so forth. So that's why the Buddha emphasized on this non-self idea, so that eventually we will be free from them. And that's why the Buddha emphasized it in the what they call three marks of existence. The first one, impermanence, and the second one is the non-self that we just studied recently. And the next one, we would discuss what you call the third mark is the sufferance, this sufferation. So most of the time when we interact with other people, even in our life, we would not have much uh, satisfaction about ourselves uh, regarding about our physical body, because we have to go through the process of life. You know, we were born, we have some kind of illness, we Asian, and one day we have to go. So again, when we healthy, uh, we may go here and there, we may travel around, we may consume any kind of food that we like. When we're sick, that's so discomfort for us that we could may not consume the food that we like. um, we don't have any appetite. We so weak that we walk around. So especially during this time of year, we still have the coronavirus pandemic happening. Many people lost their life, or many people they hospitalized because of the partial test with this virus. And so discomfort for them to stay at the hospital, or for them to have cell um, seclusion from the society or from families. So again, we, in this physical body, somehow most of the time we would not have much um, mm, comfort about it, especially when we get in older, especially when we have some kind of illnesses. Um, and not talking about when we don't have enough food to eat, water to consume. So with this kind of ordinary sufferings, uh, again, we have to go through, regardless of who we are, regardless of the faith or belief that we may have. So that's why the Buddha reminds us that we need to recognize the reality of life, the truth of life. So most of the time, we don't like to talk about that. We just like to talk about the time as we were born. That means we celebrate birthday, but most time we would not celebrate the death of our family members, or the one we respect to them. But still, that's happening in our daily life. Whether we run away or not, whether we reject them or not, whether we accept them or not, they're still there. That's the reality of life. There's no way for us to run away. So that's why, like the doctor, the Buddha remind us that we need to recognize those sufferings, the physical suffering of uh, aging, of illness and death, so that we could make peace with them. We could accept them. For example, if we don't accept uh, um, what's going on nowadays, the coronavirus, and if we don't care much about uh, the law that the governors or the mayor has established, that we need to have social distance. and when we go out, we need to wear the mask and so forth. If we don't care about them, we don't regard about them, definitely it will may endanger our life. We may get the virus from other people that we may not know of. So again, to recognize this kind of sufferings, uh, and to accept them, it's much easier for us to deal with them. Um, Otherwise, like the Buddha mentioned that we may have what you call the uh, two arrows. So let's say if we have stomach and we could not consume much, we could not consume the food that we used to eat, that we like to eat. So we so angry, we so frustrated, and so forth. With this kind of stomach, again, the Buddha say that it's like we were shot with the second arrow. The first arrow, that's mean the stomach, and the second arrow is the mental suffering that we so discomfort about this type of stomach, we reject or accept. We don't accept the reality that we have stomach problems. So, but as long as we accept, oh yes, we have this kind of stomach problems, and yes, we would take the medicine, and eventually we may overcome that type of illness. Um, but if we reject uh, that type of varieties, and what happens if we consume more food? It make the matter worse. So that is why uh, we need to accept varieties. Uh, Otherwise, we create more suffering for ourselves. Now here, when we talk about our mental um, sufferings, is including pain, stress, anxiety, depression, and so forth. So here's what they call the chronic pain. So it's just a diagram to illustrate that how it affects our mind. Right? We have the pain, let's say the pain in our muscle, that have muscle tension and have pressure on the nerves, that reduce circulation, the muscle shortening, and we may have anxiety or depression about that kind of muscle problems. We could not lift even a chair, if we could not walk around, and so forth. That's why we feel so depressed. We have a lot of anxiety about that type of muscle problems, and it may trigger a poor sleep. That means we could not sleep well because so painful. We so suffer about that kind of pain. And again, that's the cycle of what we call the chronic pain that we have to deal with. This is one of the example. So that's why we need to recognize why the Buddha remind us that we have that type of suffering, mental suffering in our mind because of attachment, because we don't accept variety of life. But let's say if we accept, yes, we have muscle tension, we have muscle pain, and we just take medicine and try to relax our mind. Eventually, uh, um, it may be better, or we may have maybe stronger. Otherwise, if we still have so much stresses about that muscle pain or stomach ache, again, we add one more layers of suffering in our life. And so that's why we need to separate the pain from the suffering. The pain that's come with the reality of our physical body, or with something happened to us. But the sufferings are not. That's depend upon our mentality. We can decide to accept and move on, or we reject and get stuck with those pain. Let me give you one example. There's one lady. she has some problem with her legs, and so somehow she went to see a doctor. And after paying the doctor visit, she got the prescription uh, for to buy the medicine to that's about less problems. But few days later, the problem is still occur. She still feel pain about that type of legs. So she complained that doctor uh, that could not provide the proper treatment for her. So she's so angry or desperate about that type of situation, or she so angry about that doctor. So again, that's another layers of suffering besides the physical suffering that she was enduring. So again, time is up. I'd like to end today, and next time I will discuss further about this third mark of existence, the suffering. Now, of course, it relates to the lecture that I mentioned about in the first number two, the true of sufferings that relate to the physical and mental suffering. So again, let me stop here today, and we'll see you next time. Uh, Nam mô Shakyamuni Buddha.